isn't just breakfast. It might be the first McDonald's breakfast you're having at McDonald's again. This lunch might be a weekly tradition you hadn't had in weeks. And this dinner might be the first one you bought for not just you in a while. Whatever this order is for you, McDonald's will be here to take it.
Get more of the chicken you love with a delicious McChicken sandwich for $1. And for an extra buck, add a refreshing Dr. Pepper. Dining rooms are starting to reopen in certain communities at participating McDonald's. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the #1 way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
I'm Noble McIntyre of McIntyre Law, and I've been representing injured Oklahomans and their families for almost 30 years. At our firm, we've handled hundreds of crashes involving semis. They are huge vehicles, and when fully loaded, can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds. Most semi drivers are careful and professional drivers, but some big truck drivers and the companies they drive for are dangerous, and I've personally seen the devastating effects on families. If you or a loved one has been affected by a semi crash, contact us at 405-777-7000 or McIntyreLaw.com. We will fight for you.
Achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell and save 10 cents per gallon on every fill. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status and the Fuel Rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
It's back to school season for the kiddos, which means it's the perfect time to get your vacay on. Beaches are empty, resorts are quiet, and Cheap Caribbean Vacations has fall vacay deals up to, wait for it, 45% off.
Plus, you can score more site-wide savings and take an extra $50 off your booking now through September 5th. Take this as your sign to pencil in a vacay this fall and turn back-to-school season into back-to-beach season.
Go to cheapcaribbean.com to find your next all-inclusive vacay. Offer ends September 5th.
You can achieve platinum status in the Fuel Rewards program at Shell twice as fast by filling up 6 times with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status and the Fuel Rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Green man in the desert night, Bigfoot roaming out of sight. Government shadows, secrets deep, conspiracies unfold while we sleep. Strange encounters unexplained, truth is out that really shame. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling history, stories untold. Area 51, a whispered name. UFO sightings, a haunting flame. Loch Ness monster, a watery myth. Cryptozoology, a curious gift. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely changed. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Skeptics doubt, believers yearn for
Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to the extravaganza known as Juxtober. That's right, it's Juxtaposition. I'm Rick, he's Ordy, but we do things a little bit different, and this month we're even starting a little bit earlier. We've decided to kick off Juxtober a little bit earlier because we just decided we didn't want to wait a week. So even though it's September, it is officially Juxtober. I'm Rick, he's Ordy, and we have a special guest that we'll get to in a minute. Good morning, or good what day is it? Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever the hell you might be, because it's been a day for me. So we're lucky we're here.
That was a nice nod to Art Bell there. That was good. Just enough so we don't get sued.
It was a flub recovery, but it worked.
It worked well. How you doing, man?
If I answer that question truthfully, people would probably be wondering why I was on the air today. Because it's been a long day. I had a wedding today. My 4-year-old granddaughter got stung by a bee for the first time, and she was convinced it was a caterpillar because it landed on her. She's like, "Oh, look, caterpillar." Got stung. Mad at the world for like 2 hours, and all I kept hearing for like 2 hours was, "Papa, I don't like caterpillars."
Yeah. Well, there you go.
So it's been a day. How about you? How are things with you?
I'm actually the first weekend in a long time I have 2 days off, so I slept in. That was fantastic. And prepped for the month. Started going through the bumper music and the info you dropped for tonight, even though we probably won't use it because Aggie is such a fountain of knowledge. We're not going to get a word in edgewise.
Oh, no, in case you missed the memo, she's only doing hour 1, sir.
I did miss the memo.
Yeah. She done told
me.
Me.
We better get to it. I mean, we can talk about our bullshit later. We got to get our Aggie time.
Yeah, she's done told me that she loves us, but she doesn't stay up late for nobody. So
you're beautiful enough. You don't need any more beauty sleep.
Wow. I don't know where to go with this.
So anyway, in case you hadn't noticed already, our special guest this episode is Aggie Rican. Aggie, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm finally on with you guys. Remember the time so long ago that I was supposed to be on and talk about witches?
Yeah, well, actually,
we did it as a makeup later, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, we did because we covered it later on the but yeah.
Yeah, it was fun times.
That's kind of the trend with some of the topics. For those of you who are new to the show, we do this every year where we take our bi-weekly show and make it weekly and deep dive into a topic. And witches was, pun intended, cursed. Just like the year we did demons. Completely cursed.
Yep, it totally was. I mean, I don't think you even got to do the last episode.
No, we didn't. I got called into work.
Which is why I was laughing in my head a minute ago when he was like, "And I've got 2 days off for the first time in forever." And I'm like, Ordy's phone goes off in 3.
So, yeah, that was the other night too, but thankfully not that. So, welcome.
Thanks for having me on, guys. I really appreciate the shout out.
You are more than welcome. I mean, there are some anthropological ties to the topic. So
there are actually, a lot of people seem to associate vampirism with it started with Bram Stoker, but actually it has ties thousands of years back. So, he just took advantage of the situation.
Well, depending on who you talk to, it's like every ethnic group thinks they started the idea of vampirism. We'll be getting into that later because you can find ties going back way, 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 way far. But yeah, it's just weird because it's like, no, we did it first. No, we did it first. No, we did it first. I'm like, dude, it's in the Bible. I think they win.
Yeah.
Well, right, and and I mean, depending upon your interpretation, definitely in the Talmud, and they borrowed their lore from Mesopotamia.
Yes.
On the topic, well, on many things, but on this particular topic as well.
Well, this is true. But
Mhm.
anyway, that's a topic for another show. So,
Yeah. But jump in.
uh-oh, what happened? Amish
Okay.
suddenly sounds like he's a drive-through speaker.
I'm
Weird.
Oh, you're back now.
Okay.
For just a second, it sounded like you were about to say, "Thank you for choosing Wendy's. How may I help you?" Tell
This
yourself.
sounded a little like a drive-through.
That would be A&W or Wiener Schnitzel. Thank you very much.
Oh, now I'm hungry again. Where'd it go?
Don't get me started. Don't get me started with your Wiener Schnitzel stuff either.
I have to. I already promised Ordia I was going to go to their Wiener Schnitzel over in, or was it Plano or Richardson or Mesquite, somewhere up there.
Yeah, Plano or Mesquite. I think both have them.
It's somewhere out there, right on the outskirts of Dallas. So next time I'm headed in that direction, I will make sure I will take a picture and I will post it as proof that I was there and that I ate there.
Excellent. You won't be disappointed.
I hope not.
All I have to say is, with AI the way it is today, are we really ever going to know if you were actually there?
Okay, fine. Yeah, that's fair. But no, actually, you would, because I don't do AI. I refuse to. I don't even do filters.
I just did Wiener Schnitzel. You shush.
So anyway, back to the topic tonight. Vampirism.
Sure.
Like I was saying, it's I guess everybody, like you said, everybody claims to have had the first foundations of that particular myth. And it's really funny because some have certain characteristics of vampirism as opposed to all of the characteristics. The main one being the blood sucking. That's usually where you go. That's the first go-to for vampirism, but that is not the only characteristic that you find with vampires. You have the whole situation where they cannot be exposed to sunlight. They could supposedly only one type of wood can kill a vampire. Supposedly they have a charisma about them, a certain charm, a certain element of sexual tension that makes them more aware to women than to men. Those kind of things are also associated with vampirism. But some cultures do have their versions of vampires that don't have that blood drinking associated with them. Specifically, when you go into Africa, certain parts of the Bantu people have that particular myth of a certain vampirical creature. And the biggest, I guess, the biggest vampire trait that the creature actually has is a massive wingspan. It makes it look like a bat. And they do tend to wait in trees. So that is a characteristic that we associate with vampires, them turning into bats. So you will find that sort of thing. But most of the time, the thing that these creatures from African mythologies tend to want to drain from you is your life energy as opposed to blood. And
yeah, I was going to mention that too, and that seems to be outside of Europe. That seems to be the common trait of vampirism is basically what could be described as a psychic vampire, where it just drains your psyche. It's South America and Africa specifically.
Yeah, but in a way, blood is actually associated with that. And there's a school of thought to which I subscribe that the concept of humorism actually played a part in vampirism. For those of you not familiar with what humorism is, there are 4 humors in the human body, or that's what early medicine used to teach, and there were blood, phlegm, black bile, and yellow bile. Blood was associated with people who were very jovial, very cheery, very outwardly happy. They were outgoing. So an imbalance of blood actually made for a very happy person. That energy, that happiness was very contagious to others. And people, it was something that would attract someone. And so there is a school of thought that says perhaps that's where the whole draining of the blood came from, as opposed to just the ones that we have in the Bible where it's associated with demons and evil spirits, and that's why the blood thing became a part of vampirical lore. They are the undead. They needed happiness. So that was the connection that some people think that that's where that connection came from. It wasn't just associated with the evil, the things that the demons did, which was, drink the blood of children and mothers and eat their bones and stuff like that. But it also had that association that a happy person had a more lively life, had more life than a regular person that didn't have an imbalance of blood in their system. And so the undead would seek them out.
All right. Well, believe it or not, we already have, since we're in the primer phase, kind of an intriguing question from the chat. Denny just asked a question that I was actually going to bring up in a few minutes anyway. So have there been any vampire movies or series, in your opinion, that ever got close to the folklore?
That is an interesting question.
I figured it may take a minute for everybody to ponder that, so I thought I'd go ahead and bring it up now while we keep going.
I'm trying to think. Most of them tend to stick to the whole Bram Stoker lore, mostly simply because it was, it's the most well known. So it's the one that's used most often. In a way, I guess Anne Rice kind of took it to the next level, and made took something from the Frank Langella Dracula and made it even more so. So these vampires had this sexual aura, and all that stuff. And it was, but that's completely different. As far as other folklore, there've been several movies that have been made based on other cultural aspects of their type of vampires, I guess, but none that most people would think about, and they took major liberties. So I don't even count them.
So for me, I think honestly, most of the series, especially the ones that have been done once they got past the whole, black and white phase, have kind of all taken a little bit of the folklore. I don't know if anybody's gotten 100% close to the legend and stuff. The one thing that I will say that I thought was a nice touch, because it's one of the only times I've ever seen it mentioned, was in the originals, even though it was a teeny bopper CW show. The vampires that actually sired everybody could not be killed except for with a specific type of wood. Now the other vampires could. They could be killed by pretty much any type of wood, but the ones that actually there were like 5 original vampires that started the entire race, and they had to be killed with a specific type of wood from a very specific tree. So I will say that's probably the only show that I've seen that reference in, at least anything that I've seen, and I thought that was a nice touch because that's a really old bit of the folklore there. So
yeah, that is a good harkening back to the original. One of the cultural norms of that particular myth, I guess.
I can't say that. Oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I can't say that there's any that I think really capture the essence. When you're talking about TV, movies, and so on and so forth, it has to make it simple for the lowest common denominator. So it will always play on the archetype. But if you were to expand that question, and the 2 most interesting takes on vampires, I would have to say, is Sanctuary, the underlying subplot of Sanguine Vampirus, and they're actually carried through most of the series too, or the book series Necroscope by Brian Lumley. Those both have very interesting. And yeah, I can't commit to Spirited Books because I don't know what my work schedule is going to be. But if I can make it, I would love to get on with you guys this month and talk about the series of books.
That would be cool because I found a book that I would rather read for it. It's our Spirited Books is going to be on not this Monday, but the following Monday. So you have a week if you can make
Right.
it.
Yeah, that's like it all depends on work, but yeah, I'm hoping. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Okay, because I know Jeff has a vampire book, and I was going to read this one, and I started reading the mystery book, but then I had a recommendation from Amazon, and I'm like, okay, you win. It happens to be about a vampire, so I got to get that one.
Now, one of the things I wanted to ask you about, it seems to, in all the research I've done today and even in the past, aside from Southeastern Europe, I mean, obviously you have, the whole Carpathian area and the Transylvania and everything. But even then, they're not vampires, they're reverents. And that's just kind of where Bram Stoker took that idea and moved it. Italy seems to be absolutely fucking rotten with vampirism.
Yes.
What is it about the culture of the Italians, and to a lesser extent the Greek, because it's kind of funny that
Well, you have to, I don't know if you remember, but the term strigoi is Roman and it is an undead. So it has been it has been a part of Greek and Roman mythology for a very, very long time. And it stuck. I mean, of all the things to stick, only two things stuck: the shoe thing and this and the vampire thing. Those are the things that stuck the most in Italy. Yes, the Etruscans actually were very well known for their shoemaking. So go with that. Do with that what you will.
But and also, you both talked about the specific type of wood, and I know that they tried to work silver into it too, but not every common person had their access to silver or iron. But iron seemed to play a heavy role in the staking as well, and the as one of the means. I just needed to bring that up real quick. But
yeah. According to I believe Greek mythology, the thing about the silver was a curse by Artemis, if I recall. And so she felt bad and said, okay, I'm sorry I did that to you. And weirdly, every time some god cursed somebody, they never took back the curse. They just said, well, I won't take back the curse, but I'll give you this in return. Does that make you feel better?
And that seems kind of shitty of Artemis too, because it's like she's like, okay, so I'm gonna curse you. Silver hurts you, and well, it's also the other god, Apollo and a couple others put some pretty shitty curses on you as well. But in order to make it up to you, I'm gonna make you live forever. That doesn't seem like a make it up to me thing. It's like, okay, you never age. You're stuck you're stuck perpetually in the state you're in, and you have to bear these burdens for eternity. But this is my favorite to you.
That I never really understood. As far as Greek mythology, the gods were never favorable. They were not good. Everybody says, oh, what's his name? In Hades, he was the worst of them. And I'm like, actually, no, he got a bad deal.
Right.
And he decided to honor it. He didn't have to. He decided to honor it. So the rest of them are absolute shit. I mean, I cannot for the life of me understand how it was that a lot of people would look at Greek mythologies thinking, oh, he's the god of the sun and he is so great and all that stuff. No, he was an absolute asshole. And they all were, About the only one I actually have respect for was Hera, because she was like, oh, you're going to do this to me? Okay, I'm going to punish you.
The perpetual jilted wife.
Yes, she had to deal with a very, very bad situation, okay? But going back to the whole vampirism thing, we may think that it was born out in, Vlad Tepes over in Pennsylvania and all that stuff, but no, Italy was pretty much ground zero. As far as I'm concerned, as far as the West goes, Italy was ground zero. It has far more of the lore and the the stories. There are countless stories, and oh my goodness, I remember my grandmother would tell me this for her. This was entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
If we weren't in bed and she was telling us a bad story or anything like that, we were just sitting there drinking our afternoon coffee, which was really cool for little kids because coffee is an adult beverage, and she would tell us all of these stories about Italian, the vampires and the evils that they did, and all of these mythological creatures. And that's how I got into the whole Greek mythology, Norse mythology, all that stuff, right? And I mean, we're sitting there going, why is she being so mean? And she wasn't being mean. It's just that she was imparting, what she felt was cool information, historical information, that kind of thing. But, most of the stories that she told us were about Italian beings. I mean, I don't think she ever told us about Baba Yaga. She never told us about the Grimm's fairy tales. She never even touched on those. Most of the stories that she told us were, Italian myth, Italian cultural references to, the Roman mythology and the Greek mythology that had permeated the regions. And so, I grew up with all that stuff going, man, those people had really, really, really interesting heads, because I don't know how you came up with this stuff most of the time.
Well, not even Italy. I mean, Italy's, generally, but specifically Florence. I mean, that's one of the origin myths of vampire. The guy who was cursed was from Florence.
Yes.
And so much literature and lore goes back to, if you're going to talk about vampires, they had to be in Florence at some point, pre-Renaissance or Renaissance. Otherwise, it's not a real vampire story.
Yeah, it's kind of like Champagne region for vampires. That's pretty much it for me. I mean, there are certain, for me in the West, it was Italy. For in the Middle East, it was obviously the Mesopotamian region that gave birth to that particular myth. For Southeast Asia, I want to say it was northern part of India, as opposed to southern part of India, that gave birth to their version of their vampire. In Africa, I want to say it was the West Coast mostly. You have some random mentions in, southern part of the Congo, all the way down to past Tanzania. So very few, some random, but most of them are in the west part. And that translated to ours over here during the slave trade, when slaves came to Jamaica and Puerto Rico and Cuba and eventually the United States. They brought that myth with them and incorporated them into the mythologies that were already established on those islands. And it grew from there. It became something completely new. So what you have as a vampirical myth in the islands, in the Caribbean, is something that merged from the west coast of Africa into the indigenous mythology that was already there, and it became something else, and associated with other things such as voodoo and the S word, Santeria, which I don't particularly care to talk about.
You almost
Not that there's anything wrong with that. And I'm just hedging my bets. But that's another step that that was taken when, with the slave trade, they brought their myth with them and incorporated it into the mythology that was already established here. It was also incorporated into the religious areas that were already settling in the in the east coast of the U.S. So that got, when you go see, if anybody goes to a predominantly Black church and you see you hear some of the hymns that were born from the slave trade and the regimental, charismatic, uh, what do you call it? Church itself.
Mhm.
That has roots in that. So with that, the vampire myth has roots as well. So what you see in places like New Orleans, places like Chicago, believe it or not,
Atlanta.
Atlanta, and all up the East Coast, you will find um, their versions of the vampire culture, and like the versions that they have over in the western coast of Africa, they don't necessarily maintain that they need blood in order to get that um, life, bloom of life in them. They do require energy. And for them, it is about energy, whether it's psychic energy, whether it's, the energy of being around people who are very happy or who are very connected with each other. It's still a transfer of energy for them. And that's their type of vampirism. And that's what you see, sometimes when you're out in NOLA and off in Bourbon Street and it's past 2 a.m. and
Well, you see, it's interesting. You actually connected a dot. You just connected a dot for me because I had always wondered why NOLA and Atlanta specifically were such hotbeds of vampire lore, and then you just connected of course, the West African slave trade.
yes, it is. And this is something that, when I was in school many, many years ago, our teacher was talking about how
it was yesterday.
it was not yesterday. Yeah. I just got my notice for my 35th anniversary, my 35th college year reunion, and I'm just crying.
And they're
but
paying
anyway.
off your student loans.
Anyway, but like I was saying, the whole I see y'all made me forget my teacher. It wasn't until she actually was talking about the west coast of Africa, and because this is the professor that totally wigged out over Trump in 2016, Kathy Detweiler. She was my professor. And wow. Yeah, back then she had her head on straight. I mean, she was not political at all. She was like, right. Honestly, she was one of the best professors I ever had. But she was a nutritional anthropologist, and she studied in Mali. All her sabbaticals took place in Mali and everything. And she was talking one day about one of the ladies that she knew that was telling her that she needed to avoid, she being Kathy, needed to avoid this particular area because of the vampires. The vampires were due to come out soon. And my professor was like, well, I think I'm going to avoid Mali for the next 6 months because I have no idea what she's talking about. She didn't make that connection because that wasn't her, that wasn't her purview. But the other professor, he was in the room with us. He's like, oh yeah, the vampires come out during, they have their own shindig, for about a month. It's really cool. And we're all looking at actual vampires. He's like, no. These are people who are honoring the vampirical traditions of that particular sorcerer that myth, has as its main vampire-like person. So we were like, oh, okay. And so when we were talking about foods and all that stuff, and she was talking about how the slave trade actually introduced several different types of foods to the Caribbean and the East Coast and all that stuff. I said, well, apparently it introduced, vampires too. And she started laughing. I was like, yeah, I guess it did. That was the connection that a lot of people had not made. It's just like the connection with the humorism and vampirism and why it is that they're so attracted to the blood. I mean, nobody wants to drink bile. This is true. Nobody really wants to drink phlegm either.
That's right.
But blood is not that particularly, I don't know. Some people, I'm okay with, if I taste my own blood, it's fine. But
Well, as carnivores, we're kind of predisposed to it. Well, omnivores,
Yes,
but having
omnivores.
carnivoristic tendencies, it's like, I mean, you always get that bloody steak or whatever, and you're like, okay, I'm good with this,
Yeah, and
So,
yeah, that's true. I like my steak blue, and I don't
yeah.
and don't nobody come
In
at me. I
California, you
don't
can't
care.
order charred rare anymore, and it pisses me off. So, but when you mentioned Southeast Asia, I found what actually started this whole month of Vamptober was a story that Mickey had sent me that we're going to be covering later in the month on the topic. Vietnam is also rotten with vampires. It's like their predominant boogeyman.
It is kind of odd. I haven't studied a lot of Southeast Asian mythology, but it's kind of their thing. As a matter of fact, I remember one of my girlfriends who was Vietnamese. She was so excited to see Interview with a Vampire.
Right.
I cannot tell you how excited this woman was, and I was like, her name was I want to say it was Lee, but it was spelled differently. But we called her Lee, and I was like, do you like Tom Cruise this much? And she's like, no, but it's vampires. We need to go watch it because it's vampires. And I'm like, there's better movies about vampires. She's like, not like this one. She wanted the romance. She wanted what she doesn't have in that mythology, because as I understand it, it's not pretty.
No, it's not.
And this particular book series by Anne Rice made vampirism very sexy, very hip, very pretty, even though it still had its rough moments, with the whole Kristen Dunst's character, whose name I forget, staying that young and whatever. But it just, for her, it was like, I want to see something happy and something pretty that's about vampires. And I'm like, okay. And she and my best friend went because I had absolutely no, that it was Tom Cruise. I wasn't going to watch it. So they went, and she comes back and she's raving about it, how wonderful it is, and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I'm glad you had fun, but that's not. And I told her, I said, that's not the only sexy vampire movie there is. And she was like, there's more. And I said, oh yeah, Frank Langella's Dracula. You really need to check that one out. And this was back when we still have, Blockbuster. So
Right.
she did. And she fell in love with Frank Langella. And I didn't have the heart to tell her that this movie was made in the 80s, like really early 80s. And because this happened like 15 years after that. He was not aging well. But she, she was very attracted to vampire movies because of her cultural background. But like I said, she wanted something happy. Of course, she watched, the one with Leslie Nielsen, and those that made her happy and everything. And I think it was for her. It was Dead and Loving It.
Yeah.
And for her, I think it was a reaction towards having grown up in an area where all of the scary stuff was about vampires, and your parents were always trying to scare you into doing the right thing and doing the good thing and all this stuff. And she needed an outlet of that. She needed to know that there was something nice about it, not just evil about it. And I'm like, I didn't have the heart to tell her, well, being a vampire is still evil. But
It's just sexy about it.
It's just sexier and prettier.
Yeah.
Here's a little interesting side tidbit that a lot of people don't know. Now, granted, the time frame was different based on what you're describing. But speaking of vampires and sexy, a lot of people don't know this, but 50 Shades of Grey basically started as Twinkle Vampires fanfic.
Yes, Twilight fanfic, and for the life of me, I cannot.
Right.
All I can say about that is if Dude wasn't a millionaire, that would have been a Dateline story, not a romance story.
Right. Well, okay. One of the interesting stuff we've touched on a few times is the charisma and the the sexuality that has been imbued into the vampiric myth. It's almost like that they have taken on and I won't say modern because it even goes back to pre-Renaissance, but they have incorporated the incubi succubi traits into them too, to kind of like, I don't know, consolidate. I consolidate night terror material or something. I mean, I'm trying to figure out why, because in no previous lore were they actually charismatic sexual beings, but it wasn't until like we're coming out of the Dark Ages we're like, wow, that's some hot shit right there, and feeding off the sexual energy too. I know that was more of a the non-blood vampire
Yes.
traits, but because that's also sapping joy, but Western culture leaned heavily into that during the Renaissance.
So
Yeah.
I do have another random thought just to throw in here, just because Aggie's only staying on for the hour, so and I haven't made her chuckle too hard yet, which is kind of my goal every time she's on. But with what we now know, I have a question. Why weren't most vampires gay?
Giggity giggity, giggity goo. Stick around.
I'm saying. 'Cause there's a lot more life in certain stuff apparently than there is.
Okay, I will tell you this: when Interview with a Vampire was written, I recall Anne Rice actually having an interview in one of the local New Orleans magazines or Times Picayune or whatever it was in New Orleans, and the book was coming out. The book, keep in mind, the book came out well before the movie was ever made, and there were two things that I remember reading in that. One, that the person that she modeled Lestat after was Rutger Hauer. That's who she had envisioned for Lestat. The other thing that she said, that this was homoerotic. She meant for this to be like that. But the movie itself toned it down, toned it back. But when you read the book and you read the consequent, sequels after that, there is a very big homoerotic thread running through the whole thing, because she felt the same way. So, but like I said, that's one writer's version of it. I believe there have been other writers that have had that same thought and posited that in their writing, but I can't be sure. I just know that for her, that was a big thing. She's always been that way in her books. So, and anybody that has ever read,
Jinx.
What's that?
Somebody's phone's going off. I assumed it was
That's
yours.
mine.
It's not
That's
mine.
No, wasn't my boss, just a rando. So,
gosh, I forgot what I was going to say. But
okay,
I mean, if you have read the Sleeping Beauty books by Anne Rice, then you will completely get what I mean by her books having that thread running through them, because those were, wow, completely. It was suggested that I read them, and by one of my friends, one of my girlfriends, I was just like, oh my God. I was scarred for like a month.
Only a month?
Well, I mean, I had a life too back then. I had to get to work. So, but I was just like, I could not pick up another book for like a month. And I read a book a day at the time. And so I was like really stunned about this book. And I just like, I can't. But
it's funny, Ricky, you mentioned that. When I was living down in San Diego, there was a church. I know several churches do this around Halloween. When kids go trick or treating, they hand out pamphlets of how you're celebrating Satan with Halloween. It's like, yeah, let people enjoy things. But I remember when I was down in San Diego, one of the churches handed out a little pamphlet that said vampirism was the curse of homosexuality.
I can understand that, but the connection is like really weak, for me anyway.
So there is an interesting biblical correlation that we may get to in a later episode, but there is a very kind of obscure reference to both vampires and werewolves stemming from the offspring of Judas, which is why they all have an aversion to silver in certain folklore.
Awesome.
So that will probably be something we'll get into in a later episode if I can find enough notes, because I saw it a few years ago and when we first started doing Juxtaposition, and I kept meaning to come back to it. And then I went and tried to find all the notes to it, and I couldn't find them anymore. So now I have to go do a deep dive. So that may wind up being one of the last things we touch on if I can find all the pieces.
Well, and along those lines too is, I mean, I'm going to preface this by saying, yes, I am aware that is the core premise of the RPG game Vampire the Masquerade, but there is some references to the Curse of Cain being vampirism too, where the children of him and Lilith were what spawned the vampires. It's that chicken and the egg thing. Well, if only a vampire can create a vampire, what was the first vampire? And that was the union of Cain and Lilith.
Yeah, and there are some people that do think that the first vampire was like, and if you watch Blade Trinity, which I did, was a mutation. That it was just something that happened because the stars were aligned, the moon was right, the werewolves were out. I don't know, but the
right gamma ray hit the right DNA, and
yeah, exactly. So
and suddenly the Hulk was born. Oh wait, wrong show.
Right.
and and I found myself kind of looking. I had to step back from that conversation because I wasn't in the conversation, but I was reading about it, and they were talking about that it could have been from a genetic mutation, and I'm like, okay, now you're telling me that this is a real thing. Okay, where's the proof? I mean, because it has been a myth up until today. Unlike, and I don't want to associate the ones that consider themselves vampires in our culture. That's something a little different. They have, like I said, they have characteristics that are adjacent, but they're not out drinking blood. They're not out killing goats and then, whatever. So like for them, it's about drawing the energy from others that have a lot of that giving energy, a lot of that positive energy, and that's what they seek.
Well, so you didn't mean to, but you actually segued into a final point that I wanted to make while you were on with us.
Cool.
I in high school actually was pretty good friends with somebody who one day just out of the blue was just completely freaked out. And I'm like, what's going on? And she's like, I don't think I could tell you. So of course, I was thinking there was something going on at home. Maybe, something happened with a family member. So after weeks, and I mean weeks, of her just seeming completely different, I finally just stopped her one day and I said, you have got to tell me what's going on. I said, you have not been like yourself now for over 2 months. And she's like, do you promise that you won't think I'm crazy? I mean, I can't necessarily make that promise depending on what you're saying, but I know you well enough that I don't think you're crazy. So she's like, well, come talk to me after class, because the bell was about to ring. So we're walking down the hallway to the next class, and she pulls me aside for a second. She says, you cannot tell anybody I told you this, but I have seen an actual vampire. And dude, she believed it. You could just tell. And she was talking to me about it for half my junior year because I was the only one that was willing to listen to her. And it was insane. I mean, she wouldn't tell me enough detail for me to try to figure out who they were or where she'd seen them, but she believed it to her core that she knew somebody who was an actual vampire, and it was freaking her the hell out. And
it's kind of freaking me out right now.
And unfortunately, she didn't keep up. We didn't keep in touch when I graduated, so I haven't heard from her in forever. But I mean, like halfway through my junior year, all my senior year, every time we talked, I was like, okay, so, and she's like, yeah, I still believe they're real, and this is why I believe they're real. And I'm like, okay. But yeah, I know somebody who legit, went out of their way to tell me that vampires are real, and she knows they're real, and this is why she knows they're real. And I'm like, that's kind of terrifying. fine. But thanks for letting me know. And I mean, this is, I graduated in 92. So this was 90 to 91 and 91 to 92. We're talking forever ago. And Aggie's
That's kind of
Aggie's
creepy.
I was out of college by then, sir.
I was. I was
was too.
already a working girl. No, not that kind.
Phrasing.
I was going to say
Phrasing.
But along that lines too, I know we have all encountered, and to go with the actual, if vampires were real, they would probably be more like this thing. We've all encountered energy vampires, people who just walk in the room and suck the life out of it. You don't even have to say anything or do anything. They walk in the room and then
Yes,
everything.
and you feel
it's
this draining.
You just feel this draining. It could be a happy-go-lucky party, whatever. But as soon as someone enters, it's not like the conversation just stops and record scratch, but everything starts to become more muted, more distant, more cold.
Yeah, I've known my share of those people, sadly. And some people would characterize those as being toxic. And there's a certain toxicity. And the weird thing is that some of the people that have that trait don't know that they have that trait.
Right.
And in a way that's, you can't really explain it to them, but there are those who not only understand that they have it, but they actually ratchet up. They ramp it up completely when they're in social situations. They like the way they disrupt things.
Mm-hmm.
They are disruptors. So yeah, that I have seen that happen. I have known people like that. And as a matter of fact, I've run across them on Twitter too. And it's weird because you can tell who they are on, when you see them.
Absolutely. I mean, they can suck the joy out of a conversation just by being there. And through no fault of their own or actively. Work, same thing. I've worked with people who you could be having the absolute best shift or whatever, and then they come in for theirs, and everything, it just goes to pure chaos just by their arrival. And they've done nothing but walk in the back door.
Yeah, it's really weird how some people are like that.
Well, there's the main problem. They like to use the back door. Oh wait, wrong show again. My bad.
Back to the giggities.
I'm surprised he didn't play.
Man.
I thought about it, but it's been glitching, so I was like, eh.
Oh goodness. But there is, like I said, the common vampires that you meet today. There are clusters of vampires in certain areas. Most of them tend to be in either large urban areas or in the southern part of the United States, and travel through the southeast and up to the northeast. So that backwards L-shaped area for the most part. The people that you meet in those circles are very attracted to each other because they have a commonality about that whole aura thing. The myth of the vampire for them is not about a blood-sucking ghoul who is undead. It's about somebody who actually needs someone's life force in order to live, in order to be more alive than normally is. So these people tend to congregate because they have that common feel among each other. And weirdly enough, you may actually know some in real life that subscribe to that particular culture and not even know it, simply because they look like normal people. I mean, there's some that do the whole fang thing. There's some that do the whole very, Elvira makeup, that kind of thing. But for the most part, they tend to just be pretty much average people. If for them, it's actually more of a mental thing than it is a physical thing. But it does fall under the vampirism because of the definitions of the life and the aura and the transfer of that life energy. So that's probably about the lightest vampire culture that we have going on in the world. There are some that are very heavy into it still. And when I was in Germany, there was a group, if I recall correctly, there was a group in northern part of Germany that had just been arrested because they had been stealing farm animals for their vampirical sacrifices. And they were actively doing the whole, they would stick the pig and then they would drink the blood from it, pretending to be vampires, and they had the teeth, they had filed the teeth to where they were, the canines were very sharp. They only came out at night. They stayed at home during the day. I mean, they were really giving off a lot of clues to the local police populations, that all of the police departments were like, yeah, we know who these people are. So, there was an investigation, didn't take very long. The moment they stepped over that and actually stole livestock in order to have a feeding frenzy, that's when they got arrested. But that was like a whole other level of dark. Luckily, they kept it to livestock. Let's just put it that way.
Right. Well, yeah, talk about that too. It's one of the topics that Rick dropped for the show too. Was when I was down in San Diego when I was in college, was right when the whole rave scene was coming on, and the ecstasy and the ED, just the whole thing about it. And I remember we were downtown San Diego. We were going to an after hours club, and walked into the place, and I looked at my roommate, and I'm all, "You didn't tell me this was going to be a vampire bar." And it wasn't like they were all goth and weird or anything. It was just everybody was far too pretty. And it bringing the sex into it. And it was just it was like a supermodel bar, but with people who didn't have 2 pennies to rub together kind of thing. And it was just everybody was just going to be there doing drugs and listening to music. And I'm like, this it's kind of like when you can absolutely tell when you walk into a party, it's like these are cocaine people or these are this or these are that. But I looked at my roommate, well, you didn't tell me we were going to a vampire bar. And at that point, he absolutely flipped out because he immediately realized what I was talking about. But it was just, it was very interesting just that it just gave off a vibe of you're not in the right place. And it wasn't because of social standing or anything else. It was just, this is not where you want to be kind of thing.
I completely get that. I've never been in that situation, thank God. But I would imagine that it would be completely trippy to walk into that and just, I've walked into biker bars and felt at home. So I can't even imagine, and I don't even ride a bike. But, you walk in and you're like, hey, and then if you treat them like you would treat your dad or your brother or whatever, it's all fine. I've never had a problem. Sure. But in that situation, I would have hightailed it. I would have been in Nevada by then. I would not.
Well, it's not like we ran out or anything. We just kind of looked around and go like, yeah, this isn't our scene. It was kind of like, but it was just really weird how, I've never walked into a bar that I didn't feel welcome. It's just that I wasn't wanted. It was just like, because the same thing. I've been in biker bars, I've been in gay bars, I've been, whatever, and total fucking drug dens that had a bar front. This one just absolutely said, "This is a culture you know nothing of. You probably aren't going to enjoy your time here." Just walking in there.
Yeah, and it is, they did, even though that particular culture is pretty prolific here in the United States,
Yeah.
Like I said,
I mean, they're basic normies during the day, but at night, there's a
at night
divide.
it's completely different. That's their scene, and they don't like bringing strangers in.
Yeah.
You have to, if you want to be in one of these things, you make your presence known, and they'll seek you out. But that's and that's the way I understand it. That's the way it has been, and I would have died on the spot, honestly. If that happened to me. I just can't even imagine coming out of there alive. I'd be like, well, I need last rites just about now.
Jeff has a good plan for next Halloween. Since
Jeff and I have been working on that one for a couple years, and I really want to do it.
I think it would be great.
Now that I don't have to sit at a desk 8 hours a day, we should start figuring out how to get it done for next year.
Yeah.
I wish we could do it this year, but okay.
That would be so fun. I'm
I
so
don't think we can. I don't think we can pull it off in a month.
I don't know.
Not making a Mickey Blowtorch production until he quits his job.
Yeah, that's true. Gotta wait. But yeah, that should be the next one.
Mm-hmm. Jeff and I have actually brainstormed quite a few plays that for many holidays. And he's got them all loaded up and ready to go. We just dropped a script, and when it's time to say go,
I'll probably ask him before our Spirited Books podcast, and
there you go.
I am curious.
So,
anyway.
You got anything else for us tonight? I know you're starting to turn into the pumpkin.
Well, no, it's vampire season. I don't do pumpkins. I'm kidding. I'm totally not. I can stay on for
I figured you got a second wind or something. You're like, no, I'm good for the second hour.
I will try to stay on as long as I can.
Okay.
She's gonna try to stay on. But we do need to take the top of the hour because we skipped the mid break. So.
Yeah.
So anyway, for those of you that may be listening on Spreaker, you're going to hear a brief interruption while I get everything reset because I like to split things up when we do longer than 90-minute shows because it's just weird to split them up. But if it's 2 hours or more, I've started splitting them up as we post them because it just makes my life a little bit easier. For everybody listening on the video or watching on the video side or listening on 365, nothing's really going to be different for you. We'll be back in a couple of minutes. We're going to take a quick break because I'm sure by now Amish probably needs another beer anyway.
Long past beer time.
Yeah, you guys were talking so much, I snuck out and grabbed one real quick. So.
Jealous.
It's not my fault. I took advantage of the lull, man. All right, we are going to take a break. I'm Rick. He's Ordy. She's special guest Aggie, and it's Juxtober. And we're talking all about the vampires. We'll be right back. Stay tuned. And this is to satisfy Denny because he already asked about this movie. So. All right, button got stuck. One moment, please. That's never happened before.
You are listening to KLRN Radio, where liberty and reason still reign.
Today, this breakfast isn't just breakfast. It might be the first McDonald's breakfast you're having at McDonald's again. This lunch might be a weekly tradition you hadn't had in weeks. And this dinner might be the first one you bought for not just you in a while. Whatever this order is for you, McDonald's will be here to take it.
Get more of the chicken you love with a delicious McChicken sandwich for $1. And for an extra buck, add a refreshing Dr. Pepper. Dining rooms are starting to reopen in certain communities at participating McDonald's. Cannot be combined with any other offer or combo meal.
Hi, everyone. This is JJ, the co-founder of Good Pods. If you haven't heard of it yet, Good Pods is like Goodreads or Instagram, but for podcasts. It's new, it's social, it's different, and it's growing really fast. There are more than 2 million podcasts, and we know that it is impossible to figure out what to listen to. On Good Pods, you follow your friends and podcasters to see what they like. That is the number one way to discover new shows and episodes. You can find Good Pods on the web or download the app. Happy listening.
I'm Noble McIntyre of McIntyre Law, and I've been representing injured Oklahomans and their families for almost 30 years. At our firm, we've handled hundreds of crashes involving semis. They are huge vehicles and when fully loaded can weigh as much as 80,000 pounds. Most semi drivers are careful and professional drivers, but some big truck drivers and the companies they drive for are dangerous, and I've personally seen the devastating effects on families. If you or a loved one has been affected by a semi crash, contact us at 405-777-7000 or McIntyreLaw.com. We will fight for you.
Achieve platinum status in the fuel rewards program at Shell and save 10 cents per gallon on every fill. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status and the fuel rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
It's back to school season for the kiddos, which means it's the perfect time to get your vacay on. Beaches are empty, resorts are quiet, and Cheap Caribbean Vacations has fall vacay deals up to, wait for it, 45% off.
Plus, you can score more site-wide savings and take an extra $50 off your booking now through September 5th. Take this as your sign to pencil in a vacay this fall and turn back to school season into back to beach season.
Go to cheapcaribbean.com to find your next all-inclusive vacay. Offer ends September 5th.
You can achieve platinum status in the fuel rewards program at Shell twice as fast by filling up 6 times with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Right now, you're less than 5 miles away from your closest Shell, so make a pit stop this afternoon and fill your tank with Shell V-Power Nitro Plus Premium Gasoline. Click the screen now to learn more about platinum status and the fuel rewards program, or download the Shell app today. Platinum status is earned with 12 fill-ups over 3 months, 10-gallon minimum per fill-up at participating Shell locations. Terms apply. Visit www.fuelrewards.com/status.
KLRN Radio has advertising rates available. We have rates to fit almost any budget. Contact us at advertising@klrnradio.com.
The following program contains coarse language and adult themes. Listener discretion is advised.
Green man in the desert night, Bigfoot roaming out of sight. Government shadows, secrets deep, conspiracies unfold while we sleep. Strange encounters unexplained, truth is out there freely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling history, stories untold. Area 51, a whispered name. UFO sightings, a haunting flame. Loch Ness monster, a watery myth. Cryptozoology, a curious gift. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Skeptics doubt, believers yearn for answers hidden yet to learn. In the twilight zone where logic bends, the search continues with all hands. Strange encounters unexplained. Truth is out there, bravely chained. Men with knowledge, voices bold, unraveling mystery, stories untold. Truth is out there. Truth is out there.
And welcome back in for hour 2 of our usually every 2 week foray into the weird, the unusual, the unexplainable here on KLRN Radio, known as Juxtaposition, but it is Juxtober. So instead, for this month, We take over the airwaves every Saturday night. And it's going to be a little bit different this year because we actually do have a show in front of us. So next week, there will be a Front Porch Forensics that will run for 90 minutes. And then Orty and I will be on 90 minutes after that because we all have lives. and that's a lot of work, especially for me because I'll be pushing buttons for all 3 hours worth. But anyway, so we're back. We're live. And by popular demand, our special guest, who was only going to be with us for the first hour, decided she was going to take pity on us and hang out for as long as she could stand it. So she's still here. So welcome back.
Still here.
Orty's here. Aggie's here. I'm here. And we're all still talking vampires. So woohoo!
Hey, real quick, I want to jump in with the song we went out to break with. That's not the version from Lost Boys. That's actually done by the O'Keefe Music Foundation. And if you're not familiar with them, they're all over YouTube. It's a child musicians foundation, and they do amazing covers of a lot of rock songs and like even screamcore and punk too. But they're frequently doing a fundraiser through the year. If if you happen to follow them and you see a fundraiser pop up on the song, give it a link because the money that they get from YouTube for that goes straight to the foundation. So, but yeah, go check them out. That's just, those kids are amazing.
So yeah, I actually saw that they have a fundraiser link. I actually thought about making a QR code for it for the month just to see if we could get any push, but I don't know. I didn't have time today because, like I said, everything I had planned on trying to do today to make this one extra special since it was the beginning of Juxtober. Like I said, I had a wedding that I'd almost forgotten about. My daughter and my granddaughter had to be there 3 hours earlier than everybody else because my granddaughter was in the wedding party. And then in the middle of the wedding, my granddaughter got stung by a bee. So it's been a fun day all the way around. So yeah, fun time.
The other thing I found interesting today when I was getting the music together for the month, for some reason, the EU version of ASCAP and BMI has slapped a content block on the Cure's entire discography on YouTube. I could not get a single Cure song to pull up. I had to go to Spotify to get them. But on YouTube, I kept getting the error, you are not allowed to view this in your country because it contains content blocked by the blah, 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 blah. So I found that weird. Anyway.
Yeah, it is weird because the funny thing is used to you couldn't run music on Facebook or anywhere at all anymore. I've noticed they don't do that anymore because now you can put music in your reels. So the most they'll do is say, "Hey, we can't run this video here because they've blocked it in this particular area." But so it's not a takedown strike anymore because they actually have music rights now, which I think was was something they were working on for a while because everybody was complaining. Now you will still get, we're not going to boost this video or monetize it because it's not original content, but you can still put it up here. And I'm like, yeah, whatever. But that's neither here nor there.
Yeah, the other thing I found weird about it though is that the Cure had that problem, but a lot of the other European bands didn't. So anyway.
Maybe the Cure didn't keep up with their registrations.
Yeah, maybe.
So they're like, yeah, you're not covered anymore, so we're not letting anybody. Yeah, anyway, I don't know. Who knows? But anyway.
I honestly think the Cure were just a bunch of vampires.
Yeah, could be.
Possibly.
I mean, look at them.
Yeah, well, yeah. Yeah. I mean, Robert Smith really did lean into the goth.
He really did.
I mean,
because you look at their early stuff, they just look like the Beatles with a darker edge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So even though this wasn't actually on my topic list, it still kind of fits into the natural evolution of the conversation. What if the entire goth movement was just a way for the vampires to come in out of the dark, so to speak?
Sure.
It's not outside of the realm of possibility, since most people do tend to. I don't know when the whole emo thing started way back. It was like, what are you, a walking vampire? Daywalker? I mean, all the time. That's all I kept hearing.
Well, I mean, and the other thing is there's actually, and I had it in my notes and I can't find it. But there's actually a medical condition that doesn't allow people to go out in the sun. So I was like, if that part of it can even be, some sort, and this goes back to something you'd mentioned in first hour, which is, if it is a genetic mutation, this is making it sound like it's rather real. We already have a genetic mutation that causes people to get severe burns and blisters if they go out in the sun.
Yes. Yeah.
Prolonged
There's people that are allergic to sunlight.
and prolonged
And
exposure
silver.
can kill them. So the thing about it is, so is it that this condition hundreds of years ago, before anybody knew what it was, is that what started the myth of vampirism, or is there something else to it? Are there, in fact, I mean, because here's the thing, folks, and this is why we do this show every 2 weeks and 4 weeks in October, because we live in a world where things used to go bump in the night. Something changed, and it's either because we outgrew these things or because they got tired of being hunted and mostly went underground or found ways to blend in. I don't really know which side of that aisle I fit on, because it's like and we've done a whole show on this. I was nearly drowned in a YMCA with nobody around me, and nobody can explain how or why it happened. I was turned upside down in a pool. And I've told this story before. I don't know if Aggie was present, but so this is shortly after my parents got divorced, so I had to have been 8 or 9. I never could learn how to swim because my dad's, we're going to take you out into the lake and throw you in the water and you're going to figure it out. Didn't work for me, to the point where he had to fish me out. So my mom enrolled me in swimming lessons at the Y. So we were doing we were practicing our leg kicks with our little, because back then they gave you the little floaty paddles. You didn't have the arm things yet. So you had the little, like a styrofoam version of like something would kind of look like a boogie board today that you could hold on to so you could be in the deep water and not drown. So my legs got tired. So I asked for permission to go back to the shallow end of the pool. And they said, fine. Everybody was in the shallow end of the pool. There wasn't anybody, or in the deep end of the pool still. There wasn't anybody around me. I'm like hanging out, just playing with the little board and then hanging onto it. And the next thing I know, I'm being pulled to the center of the pool. I'm looking around. There's nobody but, and I'm like, hey, what's going on? And everybody's just like, yeah. And the person starts running over. But by the time they get over to me, I have been turned upside down. The last thing I remember is my feet poking up out of the water. And I can see them. And I'm like freaking the hell out because I can't figure out how the hell I got underwater and how come my feet are vertical picking up out of the water. And the next thing I remember after that is paramedics sitting over me, giving me mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. This happened in a public place in daylight with no explanation. And that's not my first experience with something weird. So that's part of the reason why I do this show, because there are things that we do not understand. And especially after that friend of mine that was like, I have seen a vampire and they are real and it freaks me the hell out and I don't know who to talk to. That's why I'm really starting to wonder if some of the weirdness that we have in our society right now isn't being driven by these people that are different than us in ways that we can't understand, and they're just trying to find ways to seem more normal by making it, I don't know, just all of it. Also, everything that's happening today in our society just seems weird. And it started with the very movement we were just talking about, because all of a sudden you had, I worked in the gay district in one of the only clubs in Oklahoma City that had like a goth night. And that was all we ever heard, even from the gay folks, was like, what are you, a damn daywalker? Because everybody was like, this is just weird. I don't know. And when you really start doing the deep dive, I think the weirdest thing for me was finding out that that they actually mention the idea of a blood-sucking entity or type of creature that sucks blood in the Bible. That really kind of just weirded me out. I'm not even going to try to pretend that it didn't.
No, I completely understand. And I'm going to vote and say that they didn't go away or go underground. I think they just decided to blend in. That's where my feelings are at.
Well, pop culture. First of all, Rick, to your point with the goth culture, that would explain my fascination with goth bushes and fishnets. It's not, it's not. It is against my will. I am drawn to them by the charismatic vampires. And Jeff dropped in chat. The disease you're talking about is I'm gonna just scroll. Polymorphous light eruption, PMLE, which to your point, also, I mean, you have hypertrichosis, which is the genetic condition that is actually called werewolf syndrome. So, that's yes, could be genetic. Sorry, didn't mean to interrupt. Go on.
I don't even remember who was talking now. So.
Well, we were talking about the bloodletting and blood feasting in the Bible.
Well, yeah. So there's actually a reference to that in the Bible, and that's actually one of the first things that really kind of freaked me out. So in the first reference, and I think Aggie kind of touched on this earlier, is in reference to something that was pronounced Luca in Hebrew, and actually Romanized was pronounced slightly differently. It's a feminine Hebrew word that literally means horse leech, a type of leech with many teeth that feeds on the throats of animals. According to some biblical scholars, a Luca can mean bloodletting monster or vampire. A Luca is first referenced in Proverbs 13:15 in the Hebrew Bible. And the fact that this kind of stuff winds up in scripture, I mean, this goes back to something else that we talked about when we were doing aliens. When you're talking about the dude, I think it was I think Elijah or Elisha, I don't remember which one. One of those dudes like got picked up by and just carried off into the air. It was like this was the first reference of anybody being called into heaven that hadn't died first. And I'm like, that really sounds like it was Jeff or one of his ancestors coming. I'm just saying. But
now he's saying aliens are not real.
Well, he has to. We have strangers in the chat, so he has to.
Got it.
He's got stranger danger. So one of the other things that I found interesting is I found a reference to what is called the first vampire clan, which, interestingly enough, did wind up taking root in Italy, which probably explains why they have so much weirdness going on there. So Ambrosio later, which is I guess the founder of the the sire of the first vampire clan, later
he was the man that Aggie and I were talking about earlier that was cursed by 4 of the Greek gods.
Yeah,
when he returned to Florence, that's when he started the vampire clan.
Yep. And that's kind of what I was kind of skimming through here was because there's a lot of weird stuff that went on there. So as far as this goes, the clan grew in size and strength until infighting created something of a civil war. So I guess even vampires have those. Interesting. Within the clan, and many vampires left to form their own clans. What happened after that and those who stayed with him is largely unknown. But yeah, I mean, there's all kinds of just little references throughout history where these things just kind of seem to blend in and pop up. I mean, half the things that I found that were referenced were like even in places like Louisiana where they believe a clan of vampires. I guess that's the word I'm going to go with because I've never actually heard what a group of vampires would be called, and I keep seeing it referenced as a clan. But yeah, I mean, it's just weird because it's like one of the other articles that I found. Hang on, where was that one?
Well, I'm not surprised about the whole Italy thing. Just, forging a civil war and then them breaking off and founding their own little, conclaves and whatnot. I mean, that's pretty much how Italy has been trying to rule, right?
Italy, really.
I mean, for the first, I think in the 20th century, there were at least 30 governments that Italy had. So
yeah,
not surprised.
Now, granted, in this article, they're talking about more of like the stuff that Aggie was touching on. That there's like this subculture that, that not necessarily believes that they're vampires, but tries to take on a lot of the traits and this, that, and the other. But again, my take on that is this just something that got started by actual vampires so they could blend in and hang out with somewhat normal people who were LARPing vampires? Because I mean, this piece is from CNN. Now, granted, this is from all the way back in 2022, but this one just kind of give a brief synopsis. When Maven Lore was being fitted for his first set of fangs, a switch within him flipped on. Something just came to the surface, and everything felt right for once in my life. He said, "I had this notion that there was more to it than just pointy teeth." He didn't know what to call the feelings at that time, or whether it would lead him to New York or New Orleans. But he knows now that it was what he called an awakening. His first taste of life as a vampire. Now, again, this, in my opinion, for this person, is some sort of need or something that they felt like was missing in their life that taking on this role helped them fill. But at the same time, is this something where the people that are these things are pushing the idea that it's just a, I mean, this is basically furries before there were furries. So my concept on this is, was this being pushed by actual vampires so that they could come out and appear more normal, because they could be like, oh no, it's just a lifestyle. It's just a lifestyle. I understand that I'm not actually really a vampire, but it makes me feel different having these teeth, and it makes me feel different when I do these things. And that's the part that kind of just freaks me out a little bit, because again, every time I hear, somebody that's like, oh, it's just a lifestyle, I just like it, and it adds more energy to my life. I go back to that, junior in high school, I've seen a vampire and they're real. That is a voice that I can never get out of my head anytime I see any of these stories, because to me this just goes back to, the best place to hide is in plain sight. So did they start these kind of movements to get people used to the idea that people could be different, and basically make it just seem like, hey, it's just a lifestyle choice. Don't mind me. I'm just going to be over here drinking blood. It's just a lifestyle choice. Excuse me?
Well, that was,
you're going to be doing what now?
That was the whole concept from, that TV show True Blood, where vampires did walk among us. And it was understood that they had their own shit going on, and True Blood was a blood substitute that they could purchase, and that way they didn't have to rely on killing human beings anymore, that kind of thing. And it was, I distinctly remember one of them saying, hey man, that was the luck of the draw, that's just my thing. I think that's pretty valid for the ones that are going on right now.
It's how I jam.
Yeah.
Well, so this is my thing with that though. And this goes back to things that we've talked about on this show, on other shows. How many times have writers and producers tried to let the truth out without people realizing that they were letting the truth out? Hell, I just played a clip today from Supernatural where they made a joke. Like fucking Sam is talking to Dean, and Sam is like, so what exactly would like gold and virgins? And Sam is like, P. Diddy.
All of these open secrets that everybody makes fun of. I mean, it's talking about Hollywood itself, and I'm sure that Orty knows far more than I do, being that he lives in that environment called California.
I thought you were being more specific.
No. Just being that you're
the drugs and the
I am.
whoremongering and I'm sorry.
But when I worked for Suncoast, I had to deal with a lot of people who were in the movie business, because we needed to coordinate with the merchandising and the the blitz, the media blitz that came with the new movie coming out and all that stuff. And yeah, one of my friends actually worked for Paramount here in Texas, the division here in Texas, and he refused to work in California because it was such a cesspool. And he would tell me stories, and they were horrible. And I was like, why doesn't anybody do anything about them? I was like, because they all know, but there's too much money involved. And that, that kind of money brings more money. So nobody does anything.
No, and that's absolutely true. I mean, yeah, it's one of the reasons why I avoid Southern California now, like the plague. I mean, I used to even love San Diego, but that's waning. Yeah, it's just, yeah, I hate to be that guy. It's like, oh shit, he's talking about Tool again. But the song Anima, yeah, that's basically Southern California. I mean, everybody is just so, and everybody knows. It's the, I mean, they joke about it in LA Story, but it's like my personal trainer's barista saw so and so doing that. And the thing is, it's not even like word of mouth, gossiping. It's just like, yeah, that tracks. That comports with other things I've seen of them too. So, I mean, it's and like Rick said, when like you or Aggie, you said with the money, and that's true. It's just such an obscene amount of money, and it's not even that the money buys silence; it's that you don't want to lose that gravy train either. So when one goes down, there's your number one client, and it's just so pervasive in everything out here.
Well, this is why, Harvey Weinstein was so pervasive for so long. It wasn't until Bob started looking at the books and seeing where some of that money was going that he started actually making waves. And that's how the women decided, hey, we need to stand up for this. Mira Sorvino is, for me, I mean, she lost her career for about 3 years. She was doing very, very small parts in whatever she could get, the Hallmark movies. And she had just won an Academy Award. And people were wondering, where did she go? This is why. She said no. But she couldn't come out because of her dad. Her dad would have had Weinstein wiped out. So, I mean, it's just, people will tolerate a lot because of the power involved and the money involved. And you don't want, like you said, people didn't want to lose the gravy train.
Well, I mean, it's that, and it's also the fact that these people that were doing these things had such a position of power that, the people that were involved in it, invested in it, didn't want to lose their cut. But the people that were, the ones that were making the movies and the TV shows and everything else, they didn't want to get blackballed either. I mean, that's pretty much, it's like you were just talking about with her. She wound up being blackballed for the longest time, all because she didn't want her dad to kill the dude. And it's just nuts. I mean, this goes back to, and this was weird because it was like, I think almost right after we decided that we were going to do vampires this month, I found an interview with Tucker Carlson and Roseanne Barr, and she's blatantly accusing people in Hollywood of basically being vampires because they like to drink blood and they like to eat babies. And I'm like, on Tucker Carlson, she's just calling them out and be like, everybody thinks I'm crazy. People still think I'm crazy. I'm not crazy. There are people in Hollywood that drink blood and eat babies. And it occurred to me, and even though we try not to get too political on this show, I'm gonna go there because it's the perfect show to do it on. What if that's the secret reason they are so enamored with the idea of abortion? Because
I would not put it past.
It gives them unlimited baby body parts to do with as they wish.
Yeah, to your point about Mira Sorvino too, another one that always boggled my mind, another one who paid the price for not playing the game, or stopping playing the game, was Rose McGowan. And one of the things, I don't know the reasons behind it because I learned celebrity gossip against my will, so I never looked too deep into it. But one of the things that never made sense to me, one, Marilyn Manson's career, and two, Rose McGowan's attachment to Marilyn Manson.
Yeah, I didn't get that either.
So that's where I mean, and we did the show back in the day, not too long ago about presidential puppets, which are MK, without getting too deep into the weeds, MK Ultra broken, basically sex puppets for high-powered people. One, how did Marilyn Manson ever get the power? And two, how did he get Rose McGowan? But and then generally with the deprogramming comes wild mood springs, which we watched Rose McGowan do too. So anyway, that's a different topic for a different month or a different. But that never made sense to me. While we're talking about goth butts and fish.
Well, I mean, I can tie this all back together into the topic real quick. What if she was being deprogrammed from vampire mind control?
Okay.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Hey, what
squared that circle for me. Thank you.
It's what I do, man. It's what I do.
I mean, we've gotten a little off base with it, but actually it's not, because it's still because again, if there were ever to be a culture that vampires could easily blend in with,
it would be the culture in Hollywood.
It would be the Hollywood. It would be the music and basically any entertainment culture.
Hello, the Lost Boys.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
that was primo.
That was a documentary.
Yeah, and let's not forget that if you actually read the vampire books by Anne Rice, Lestat does become a rock and roll.
I remember something about that. Yeah.
Yeah, a music artist and very well known. And so and they tie Hollywood into it too. So I totally see it. I completely see it. If anything, what I would call the aura vampires, the ones that do the life energy and just like to be around people with that same vibe, I would call them the good vampires. They technically stick among themselves and they really don't tend to rock the boat a lot. But if I were to say that there were some that actually adhere to vampirical myth down to the letter, I would totally put them in Hollywood. That's exactly the kind of place that they would thrive.
Oh, absolutely.
So I
don't know if you ever saw the animated movie. It was kind of like Heavy Metal. It was called Rock and Roll, and it had Iggy Pop playing. Iggy Pop was a mock, who was, he was trying to summon a demon, but the same thing of sucking the energy from the crowd, that would totally be a vampiric thing. It's as a rock star.
And it's funny because when as I was reading about Lestat, playing, performing live and everything, and he was taking the energy from the crowd and just feeding off of it. And I remember, like you said, that there are some people that they would walk into a room and completely drain the energy out of it. I remember being at a concert in Dallas. My girlfriend, she wanted to see, I don't know who was playing or whatever. It was local. It wasn't a big name or anything. And we went to, it was a Deep Ellum, so you can imagine. Mm-hmm. And we went, and the first act, it was nice, it was hip, it was great. The second act was yay, it was great. The third act, it was like I felt there was no oxygen left. And she was like, I don't like this. This is weird. What happened? And she's looking around thinking it's a weather phenomenon. Like maybe we were expecting rain, so there was a lot of, the atmosphere was charged. No, it was just the group on stage, and it was really strange. And their music was kind of off. It wasn't that it was discordant. It just didn't mesh with what was going on. So it was just a little off, that kind of thing. And they left, and the fourth group goes up there and everything's back to normal. And it was like, that was just the weirdest thing. And for a very long time, I thought it had been some kind of weather related thing that happened. And maybe, clouds were coming through and we couldn't see them because, there were tarps all over the place. but it wasn't. I honest now thinking back on it, I definitely think that particular group was, feeding on the audience the way that Lestat fed on his audience in the book.
Which I would
So
track with being a middle act too, because then, they can kind of just move. Everybody gets the energy back for the fourth act. Once they leave the
yes,
stage, but so that way it's not like going, "Oh, this band sucks." It was just, that whole incident was forgotten by the fourth act. So you remember they were on the bill, but I mean, yeah, no, that's fucking genius. If that, I mean, again, going with the, is it plausible? That's how I would do it. I wouldn't want to
well,
be the
and
top line. I would want to be one of the undercards and do what I needed to do and then be forgotten.
well, the weird thing was afterwards, how they have the little tables where you can buy their CDs or their
Sure.
shirts or whatever. They didn't have anything. All the other bands did, but not them.
That's because they got what they needed from the crowd.
I
Yeah.
guess. I don't know. That was kind of creepy. It's like
So,
I wasn't going to buy anything. I just thought it was weird. They didn't have anything out there on the table.
so Jeff brings up an interesting point. If we offed Keith Richards, will the rest of the vampires disappear?
That's what I was laughing about. Yes.
And then Andrew, would you believe me if I told you some of our Congress critters are vampires? And
Oh,
yes,
totally. They totally are.
I
Yeah.
would believe you.
Look, I seriously watch when they're speaking to people, how they lean towards some of them and how the people react to them. It's that same energy vibe, the energy transfer.
repulsion.
You can actually, you can tell on
Yeah.
the ones that do that drink. Pelosi comes to mind, but she just looks like
Well, no, and that's an interesting point because if you look at it,
Chair.
nobody leans into Nancy. When she leans into them, they either freeze or kind of move back. Because I mean, instinctually, again, we've talked about it with the
Yeah.
energy vampires that you can feel it when as they approach, and it's not like you're frozen. It's kind of like the snake and the mouse thing.
Mhm.
The mouse gets hypnotized by the eyes of the snake. It's like when you get targeted by an energy vampire, you can't. It's not that you're paralyzed, but it's just like even your will to move has been sapped from you, and you're like, "Oh God, I'm just going to be engaged in a conversation with Buzz Killington," and you're kind of stuck there for a bit. At least that's my experience. But yeah, with Nancy, you can totally see when she leans into people, they do not lean back in.
no, they don't.
And Rashid Tlaib, too. I mean, she has no charisma whatsoever. And generally repulsive when you watch her videos. I am absolutely repulsed by her, but I have a feeling that if I were to be in her orbit, it would be infinitely worse and wouldn't be able to leave.
Dude, I get that. I know we usually try not to go political, but since we've crossed that Rubicon already, I get that same vibe from Harris, if I'm being honest.
Sure. Well, Harris is just vacuous. I mean, she's just. I mean, that's a void sucking in everything.
Hey, you said Harris and sucking in the same
Right.
sentence. Well played, sir. Well
No,
played.
but I mean, Aggie, what do you think about that?
No, I completely see it. The best example I can think of is Bill and Hillary Clinton. Bill could charm ice cream from Eskimos. I mean, seriously, the dude had it. He really could. And when he spoke, people leaned in. People wanted to be around his energy. They really liked it. With
Yeah.
her, it's the complete opposite.
Absolutely.
And when you see them together, you can see she's the drain. She drains the energy from people. He
Mhm.
actually gives it. So, they're the perfect example. And when they're together, you can even tell because he doesn't like standing next to her. I've noticed that. He'll do it.
Either that, or just thinking about it too. He may actually be the hook for her. Because it's his charisma that draws people in. When she's nearby, then she can feed off him.
He's her familiar. That's what it is.
That could be it. That could be
He's
it. I
super
mean,
familiar because he draws them in and then she gets the energy. But I have a different take on Hillary since we brought her up because I actually was about to. I think if Star Trek ever becomes a reality, we will discover that she was the salt vampire. Just saying.
can you imagine?
Just saying. But yeah, no, and that's the thing. I think the people that are energy vampires, they are drawn because I believe that's a thing. Now, I'm going to be honest. I'm pretty sure at this point I lived with one for 2 decades because I was around her for an hour today and I haven't felt right ever since. But I think they are drawn to people that are, one, more upbeat than they are, and two, even if they don't realize it, have a charismatic streak that draws people in because then they get to feed off the energy from the people that they pull into their orbit. So I don't know if actual vampirism is a thing. I'm still 90% sure that it probably is because, like I said, I have been through some weird things in my life. But even if it's not, energy vampirism is. And I think there are people that it's just like what you guys were talking about. You get around the wrong person and suddenly your energy is just gone. And it was funny that this was the topic today because it occurred to me after being in her orbit for like the first 30 minutes. I was just like, I haven't felt right ever since I found out she was here. And then every time I turn around, my kids were sitting us at the same table. They were doing this, they were doing that. And I was like, you guys just are going to keep me in her orbit today. And I don't want to be there. But yeah, I have felt off ever since. And it's not because it bothers me. That's not an issue anymore because she's officially somebody else's problem now. And as a matter of fact, the weirdest thing about today, right? So one of my nephews is there. And so there was kind of a buffet thing afterwards and he wasn't eating. Well, my nephew, the 2 things that he will eat 3 things he will eat most of the time is pizza. And well, I guess it's 2 because pizza and it has to be pepperoni pizza. And his dad has gotten him turned on to filet mignon, so he will actually eat steak if he knows it's filet mignon. But so there was no pizza there, so he's just sitting there and he's watching everybody else eat. I'm like, so what's the matter, kid? You on a hunger strike because they didn't bring any pizza? And all of a sudden, I hear Roy laughing from the other side of the table. So I was like, okay, whatever. So then, just me being me and figuring out a way to make a punchline, an even bigger punchline, I was like, you should have brought a protest sign with you. Just started marching around, no pizza, no peace. dude was laughing for like 3 minutes to the point where I could see my ex elbow him under the table. It was just weird.
Okay, so something you just made me think of something too when you were talking about your ex-wife. I going beyond an energy vampire, just because I've seen the change in you since you two split. I'm going to go one step further, and this is Aggie. I think this is what you were talking about earlier when you were talking about a toxic personality, and that is actually a psychic vampire. Where have you ever seen somebody like when they get together as a couple that the person you knew when they get together with the person you don't know, their whole sense of self just starts to wither?
Yes.
Like an unwatered plant. They just become a shell of what they once were. And it's not even to say that it's an abusive relationship. It's just that the very presence of this other person, and you can kind of get a little vibe of it when you're around them, but just it's like radiation poisoning. Just it's a slow
It's
draw.
slow, and you don't notice it until it's like too late, and by then the damage is done, so you might as well just stick it out. I swear that's
Right.
the vibe that I get from some people.
Yeah. No, but have you ever seen someone who's just been like the total victim of that? It's just
Oh yes, and in my family, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I mean, y'all know I have a lot of cousins on my mother's side of the family, and I have seen, dude, I can't even. I think I found out I have three new ones somewhere. I'm not sure, but I've seen it with one of my cousins. The woman that he married his high school sweetheart. In fact, they were sweethearts in junior high, and she was a very strong, she has a very strong personality. And being that I grew up over here, I didn't see him as often. You know, I would see him when I visited Puerto Rico or whatever. But, you know, last time I was there, I was just like, he was a shell of his former self. I mean, it was just, it was weird. And nobody understood what I was talking about. I was like, what is wrong with him? And everybody's like, nothing's wrong with him. He's fine. I'm like, he's never been like this. He wasn't like this. He was, you know, he was the joker of the family. He was always trying, he wanted to try new things. He was always, you know, he played basketball, he played baseball, he got into boxing, the 3 Bs in Puerto Rico, right? The 3 main Bs. He did, you know, he decided to learn how to play chess when I was there, blah, blah, blah. And all. Now it was whatever she, you know, she would come into the room and you could see him shrink. And I was like, and nobody saw it. No one saw that, you know, and I would ask him, you know, are you okay? Is everything all right? You know, and he's like, oh yeah, everything's perfect. Everything is perfect. He used that word, perfect. And I was like, it is not perfect. You know, I haven't spoken to him in 2 years. He still has a Facebook account. Whenever I send him a message, I know that he's read it. He never answers. I don't know. There is that going on. I've seen it. I've seen it. You know, I've seen it with, you know, friends. I've seen it with people here on Twitter, you know, who have been, either they find someone to date on Twitter, you know, they finally make that connection and everything. And, you know, Twitter not being real life, you know, that you end up meeting them in real life and you feel you've gone too far with that and you can't pull away. I get that same feeling too with some people that I see here on Twitter. So it's there.
All right, so I left it up for a minute because I wanted to make sure I didn't forget, but we have a question from Jeff for the panel. Is there an opposite of a vampire?
There is, and I don't have the term for it. In Catholic circles, they're called anchorites. I have been described as one before in a different,
Nice.
you know, in a different level. But basically, the people that give everything to others without thought to themselves. That's kind of the opposite of a vampire. Whereas a vampire would need your energy, you are there to give the energy to others. So
See, and that it's funny. I was muted because I immediately jumped up before he even finished asking the question. I said my mother because she walks into a room. Seriously, everybody smiles when she walks into a room. It's a fascinating thing to watch. It's just the energy and just, you know, and she doesn't really have to do anything but like walk up to the receptionist counter and everybody in the room is just brighter. And it's funny that you mentioned you because when I'm listening to your podcast from time to time and she's around, and she says your laugh is the most infectious laugh she has ever heard in her life. She can't not smile when she hears your laugh.
really,
Yeah.
how funny. You know, she has goals for me. I need to meet your mom. I have to meet your mom. But eventually, one day, I'll make it out there. I'll meet your mom.
Oh, there you go. Or I'll get her to Texas.
I would prefer that.
Okay, because I don't want to make anybody come here.
No, it's just, you know,
Nevada's the border.
I have room. I have a guest house. I have guest rooms. I have, you know,
There you go.
I have a lake. I have trees.
But to answer your question, Jeff, in general, yes. I mean, it's not. I mean, a literal opposite would be the more modern version of an angel, not the biblical one that is just a fucking horror show.
I know.
But Yeah, I mean that's a guardian spirit. Any one of those things that just it gives you life.
Yeah,
And
there are people that actually, it just feels like you're a plant and they're watering you.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Exactly.
It's like their drink of water that you were dying of thirst, and they come into the room and you just feel completely renewed. There are those people.
Yeah, absolutely.
I
Rick,
Yes, present.
you gonna chime in on the answer?
I just told you I was AFK. I'm back now.
I know. You're back now. I saw you're back. That's why I said. Anyway,
I mean, I guess it depends on the type of vampire we're talking about. If we're talking like energy vampires, I do definitely believe there's the opposite to that, because there are people that it's just like you guys were just talking about. Somebody comes into a room and suddenly your whole demeanor changes, and it's not just because you're like, "Ooh, she's hot." It's just because they have this aura around them that just that bolsters confidence, makes people feel more comfortable, and you see that all the time. Some of the best actors have that quality, even when they're not acting. They just walk into a room and everything changes. You've seen politicians with those qualities. Reagan was one of those people. As soon as he was in a room, everybody's demeanor changed. If you liked him, you loved him. If you hated him, you couldn't stand him. In this day and age, Trump would probably be another good equivalent, because he gives off an energy that can feed a room. I mean, so I do think there are differences. I do believe there actually is probably like the difference of from an actual vampire, the opposite of an actual vampire. I just don't really know how that would work, so to speak. But for the energy level ones, that's pretty easy, because yeah, I've been around people where I can be exhausted, worn out, frustrated, pissed off, all the bad things, and all of a sudden they show up, and it's like it just slowly starts changing. And believe it or not, I've actually been told by a few people that I'm somebody that does that for them. So I don't know.
see, I guess the opposite of an energy vampire would be an energy well, or a psychic vampire would be a psychic well. Because I mean, there's people who just, like you said, we all said, there's people that just radiate. I mean, to use a hippie term, just good vibes.
Good vibes.
It's just yeah. I mean, that's. I think that would actually be the legitimate opposite of it.
there are some people that are like that. There are some people that exude some kind of, I don't know what it is, but one of my girlfriends has it. She came to visit us in Germany, and we went out to eat, and she just, she walks in front of us, as she's being led by the waiter. And I'm watching every single person in there looking at her. They're not looking at me. They're not looking anywhere else but at her. And she is not, I mean, she's not drop dead gorgeous. She's pretty, She was dressed in an oversized sweatshirt and jeans and flip-flops. I mean,
so not dolled up, not
her hair was up in a bun on top of her head. She had absolutely no makeup, and every single eye was on her.
So joke's on you. That's my fetish.
Huh?
I said joke's on you. That's my fetish.
You mean besides fishnets?
Yes, besides the goth blushes and fishnets.
And Jeff, to answer your question, no, O blood types are not the anti-vampire. They're universal lunch.
They're the MRE for vampires.
That's hilarious. MREs for vampires. Haven't eaten my share.
I don't like type B negative. You got any O around that just tide me over until I can get some,
None of that negative shit. Give me something positive.
Give me the positive. Give me that energy well over there.
Yeah, speaking as a negative person here.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Jeff does have a positive take on why they would be the opposite vampire, because they don't take blood, they give blood, and it saves lives because they're universal donors.
Also fair.
I guess he does have a point, but I like our joke.
Yes, we are. We're the universal donors.
I like our joke better. I'm O positive. You know what that means? I'm somebody's feedback.
Well, it
Wow.
is 11.
We
and
got
I
it.
stuck it out.
You made it.
She made it. She made it
I
to 2
did.
hours.
I did. I did.
You didn't think you could do it, but you did it.
Mhm.
And you didn't even turn into a pumpkin.
Not yet. Not yet.
All right. So, Aggie, since you're the guest, we're going to start with you. Where can folks find you?
You can find me at Aggie Weekend and at Aggie the Barkeep. Those are over on X. You can find me 8:30 p.m. Eastern Tuesday nights during the Cocktail Lounge with the ever suave Brad Slager. 8:30 p.m. Eastern Friday nights doing He Said, She Said with the awesome Rick, Rowdy Rick. That would be you, by the way. Last Wednesday of every month, and we just had one, the guys get together for Toxic Masculinity, where we host the Babe of the Month, and I bring the drink of the evening. And last but not least, Jeff and I now do a book podcast called Spirited Books, which comes on the first Monday of every month at 8:30 p.m. Eastern as well. See a pattern? Yeah, Aggie time.
Yeah, it's called Aggie,
Aggie
time.
time.
We all know this pattern. It's called Aggie time. All right. So before I move on to asking Ordy where folks can find him, I feel this deserves notice and being paid attention to because we have 397 completely amazing people watching us right
Nice.
Wow.
So thanks, guys. I never tell anybody anymore till the show's almost over because I almost made Amish puke once.
Yeah.
Anyway, Amish, where can folks find you?
That was 4 million though. Yeah. Yeah, so no Manorama this week. Ranker Steve is traveling. So my next appearance will be with you on Rick and Ordy on Wednesday night. Thursday I'll be with Brad Slager on the Culture Shift as we turn our skeptical eyes to the entertainment industry. Also starting Tuesday will be my yearly 31 days of Boingo in celebration of Oingo Boingo. And yeah, so that's what I got going on this week. How about you? Where can people not find you?
So you're not going to be on with us trashing the debate Tuesday night?
I did not know that. I will be on with you trashing the debate Tuesday night.
I've only mentioned it in 2 different rooms that you're in. It's okay. Just
Doesn't mean I read it. Was I working? By the time I get home from work, those are so buried in seas of text. I just catch up and go, "Hi, guys."
I'm just teasing you, man. It's all good. But yeah, I just figured you hadn't seen it. But yeah, we'll be doing a debate because the Veep debate is Tuesday. So we'll be doing that. I'll probably kick that off about 8 Eastern and then just let people kind of come in as they can. But as far as where else you can find me, I'll be here tomorrow night doing America Off the Rails. That is currently at 9:30 p.m. Eastern because Al is still on hiatus and Jeff and I are splitting the time. And then Monday I'll be back doing because it's now for this Monday I'll be here for the Rick Robinson show. That's Monday through Friday except for the first Monday of the month. That is noon to 3. Monday evening I'll be producing for the Ladies of the Red Wine as far as I know. And then next Monday I will be off, so I won't be anywhere. I will probably be writing my ass off though, so I can actually stay ahead for once instead of behind. And then on Tuesday night, we'll be doing the debates. Usually lately I've been hanging out with on the Manorama panel with you, but again, they're not doing one this week, and that worked out pretty well since the debate snuck up on me and almost bit me in the ass. Wednesday night, full boat, so we've got whatever 7 p.m. Eastern, Conservative Curmudgeon, 8 p.m. Eastern. Behind Enemy Lines Radio is being a fill-in for us right now, so that's 9 p.m. Eastern. Then you and me at 10 p.m. Eastern. Then I do Jen and Rick 10 p.m. Eastern. Back around here doing this thing with Aggie on Friday at Aggie time, and then I'll be producing for the Front Porch Forensics crew before we go into Juxtaposition Rocktober officially, because it'll actually be October. Other than that, you can find me as a contributor at twitchy.com, misfitspolitics.com, and theloftusparty.com, and I drop the Loftus Party podcast every Tuesday. You can follow along with me at RowdyRick73, the station at KLRM Radio, and our new news arm at Digital Beacon US. And did I mention my name's Rick? I'm a workaholic, and my last meeting was forever ago. On that note, we gotta go, because suddenly I'm trying to get a headache again. Ugh. Oh no,
Did you
what's
hit a
going
wall?
on?
Oh, great. We got an energy vampire listening to us.
Probably. I think I'm still trying to recover from the one that was with me today for like an hour and a half of my life that I wasn't expecting to be there. But on that note, we are going to get out of here. And this was one of the ones that Amish said was a necessity. So we're going to use it as the going out. I think it was one of the ones he said we absolutely had to play. So we're going to use it as going out since we didn't take very many breaks tonight. Thank you guys for hanging out with us. Absolutely had a blast with everybody. Thanks everybody who was listening and for helping KLR and Radio kind of storm the beaches, so to speak, when it comes to X. I don't tell this to many people outside of our work group, but we are beating the numbers of people that are 3 and 4 times our size because I've been tracking. You guys are amazing for helping us do that because you're the reason why. Bye, everybody.
Thanks. You were great.
Words I haven't heard in a long time.